Hello everyone. A very warm welcome uh, to our first session for DMT Thursdays. The session is on Cookiepocalypse, which is a tongue twister actually, it's about the course that we want to have in the post-cookie era. I'm your host, Gaurav Seth. I represent the Data and Insights vertical at LS Digital. And first of all, I would like to thank all of you. We've had a few hiccups in getting together, but thank you so much for your time on our session today. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our esteemed, panel of guests here. We have Dipali Nair, who's the, Group Chief Marketing Officer of CK Birla. We have Francis Rodriguez. Francis, I hope I pronounced it correctly. Uh,
Yeah,
Senior VP and Senior VP E-commerce and Digital Marketing at HDFC Life. And then we have Deepak Khurana, who's the co-founder and CEO of VServe. What are we discussing today? In our evolving digital landscape, we've seen that the demise of third-party cookies, it has been sending shockwaves in the marketing world. So we'll be using this session, these 45 minutes, to understand the intricacies of the third-party cookie deprecation, and also the best ways to tackle it and handle it. So I would like to start with you, Dipali, first. Thank you for joining. We have been speaking about it, have you actually seen an impact of the third-party cooking
I haven't actually started seeing, results where to say that, look, our ROI is dramatically, dropped or that we are not able to target, not as yet, but I expect it to happen. But let me give you the lay of the land, I think where I am today, we have about 12 businesses. Three, four of them are hardcore B2C businesses, but we also have the B2B businesses. Okay. And I personally have worked with, IBM before this. I worked with Marico before this. I worked with Mahindra Holidays. So there is a stark difference in the way digital marketing is deployed at B2B companies versus the B2C companies, right? And it is my personal estimate that the B2C companies are going to see the impact faster. I'm not saying when, but they will see the impact, faster in terms of their ROIs getting impacted. And the B2B companies will see the impact a little lesser or maybe none. Because by virtue of the marketing efforts being, B2B, they are closer to their customers. They actually technically may have the first party data. Some of them may not even deploy digital marketing for it. The fancy, third party cookie world, they may not even deploy it because they are using the first party data to do a very good job on email marketing, very good job on WhatsApp marketing, very good job on, LinkedIn perhaps, and so on and so forth. So, so that's where my expectation is. But I also look at it with a bit of a smile and a laughter at this, Gaurav, because I have been doing marketing now for 30 years. Okay. Every 10 years, there has been a sea change in the way we've had to look at marketing. The ecosystem also changes. When I joined marketing 30 years ago, there was an integrated agency who did creative and media buying and everything together. Then the first disintegration that happened was that creative and media became separate, right? And then came digital marketing. And then you had digital agency specialists who, Prasad will remember, we marketers wouldn't give them time to even listen to them. Okay. And then today you have digital advertising and digital marketing becoming such a large chunk of the overall, pie. I see in some ways this whole focus on, I'll request somebody to go on mute. I see this, in some ways going back to the principles of marketing of, when you look at first party data, it will bring it closer to the direct marketing discipline that we always had. It will perhaps make us look at our media mix modeling again. My point is that it's happening. You can't do anything about this policy changing or anything like that. So let's get on with it. Let's find ways to ensure that the ROIs get better. By the way, I started doing brand and advertising in an era when the ROI of marketing could not be proven at all.
Right.
Beyond the point, right? It was, you did surrogate variables in brand tracks and things like those. And then in the last 10 years is when the numbers and analytics have taken over, and we want to trace every dollar back to what. So maybe there'll be a fuzziness for a few months, but I think they're all a bunch of very smart guys eventually. We'll figure it out. That's the way I'm, looking
Thanks,
at it.
Dipali. So Francis, you're from the BFSI vertical, and you also individually represent the e-commerce business at HDFC Life. I'm assuming that a lot of users come on the website. So how have you seen this third-party cookie deprecation impacting you as a marketer, or how do you anticipate it impacting you and your marketing
Have we
efforts?
seen it yet? The answer is no. We've not seen it kind of impacting right away. How it could impact, I think that's a very interesting question. To start with, I think, I'll take lead from what Dipali just said, right? The impact will differ not only across B2B and B2C, it will also differ across different types of B2C, right? BFSI primarily being, an industry where the customer does eventually, at some point of time, give a lot of PII information, give a lot of identifiable information back to, the manufacturers, back to the pieces, will probably have a slightly lesser impact compared to, say, consumer packaged goods, etc., where the customer doesn't give that much information at different points in time, right? Having said that, when this entire piece started, I think the first thing we decided is that, okay, let's kind of go and put a rupee crore impact to this. Let's put a monetary impact to this, and let's go and see how can this how will this impact monetarily. So the first thing we said, okay, maybe whatever we are doing in terms of retargeting and the leads coming through retargeting would kind of reduce and stuff. And then we said, okay, what percentage of business comes to retargeting? How much of this is people who've come and visit our website versus how much of this is retargeting across different pieces? And then we said that number is not very large, right? So bottom of the funnel, maybe it is less than a 1-2% kind of an impact, right? Much less than that. Then we said, okay, where else could the impact be? So one of the possible impacts is first touch, top of the funnel kind of an impact, right at the time of where you're finding the right kind of interest-based audiences. And then we said, okay, most of the walled gardens, whether it's Meta or Google, etc., will have some alternative, because they too want to kind of ensure that their revenue stream and their ability to kind of reach these people is there. So what is the kind of business which is coming from outside this piece? And again, the first first touch, top of the funnel kind of new to business customers. And then when we kind of drilled that again, the impact was relatively less. Although yes, it was significantly more than where it was at the bottom of the funnel in terms of a first touch new to business customers coming in. So net, when you looked at the impact, it was not extremely high, but it was something which made you think in terms of accelerating something that I feel any which ways is important today. One of the things that's important today is delivering value for everything that the customer clicks on, sees, your content and everything else. And at the end of the day, what the third party, cookie deprecation is doing is accelerating this piece of, being able to deliver that value. If the customer really cares about, what you're offering, and not only in terms of your end product, but what you're offering in terms of the communication, what you're offering in terms of tools for help him, in the case of insurance, help him, plan his financial future better, etc. He'll happily give away, the zero party data and everything else that it's there. Even from a publisher point of view, you'll happily kind of pay for your content or log in, and then doesn't and solve the problem for the the third party cookie per se. And this problem kind of continue to exist, right? As marketers, you continue to want to be able to build communication which delivers value. This kind of accelerates you in that direction and makes you think, in this case, you're delivering some value in terms of a tool, in terms of a communication, in terms of things that will help the customer better, or literature and everything along those lines. And in turn, you're asking him for his data, whether you're a publisher or you're, a brand. And I think what this will do is accelerate that, and it's not a bad thing from that perspective.
Thanks, Francis. So Deepak, Francis made a very important point, right? That as long as the communication is delivering value to the user. The user may be forthcoming in sharing their details. In our advertising ecosystem, we call that the identifier. So VServe has been using non-cookie based identifiers to identify and target users for a long time now. So how do you see this identity landscape shaping up, as time passes?
Okay, see, first things first. So today, when you talk about cookies and you talk about the deprecation of cookies, and you're talking about targeting, you're talking about user identity, and then you're talking about impact either at the top of the funnel or bottom of the funnel. Those are all kind of intertwined in more than many ways, right? So first things first, when you think about what did cookies really help us with, okay? So let's talk about a world when cookies didn't exist. Okay, it was a very private world. People used to buy impressions. Okay, internet was very private. Yeah, and people used to buy impressions and hope that you are getting some ROI out of it, right? Then in the Web 1.0 world, as the web ecosystem started expanding, you started leaning on cookies. Okay, you started leaning on cookies for what purpose? Largely to make targeting more effective, right? A large part of it. So is the question in the room is, do I need alternatives to cookies or do I need alternatives for targeting? What are we solving for? None of us are really looking at, Dipali doesn't care, or I would argue that you're basically saying the cookie was a means to target. Cookie was not my end objective. Targeting is my end objective. So now the question back comes to the basic part, that what options are available to target people and where. And as Francis mentioned, that when I target people on platforms like Google and Meta, which have their own user identifier, have n number of other attributes, okay, they're less worried about the deprecation of cookies. Okay, that's one very clear narrative out there. Now, when people look at targeting, coming back, I'll keep going back to the primary problem in the room of targeting. Okay. Now you're in an era where you're talking about, luckily you're not in a browser era, you're in an app world. Okay. So there is a lot of browsing which is happening in the app world. There again, for now, cookies don't exist. Okay. So that world is less impacted. That world is not impacted at this point of time. Yeah. Now from targeting perspective, what is also happening is that over time, consumers, because the digital adoption has evolved so much, and many consumer facing platforms have built a very good value exchange between the customer experience, okay, and the customer leaving some form of first party data or some form of data, which is the identifier, which is say a mobile number or an email ID. So organizations who have focused on over time building a great consumer experience where there is a value exchange and the user is elegantly participating in giving that data out or giving that identifier out in lieu of a better experience or better services which the platform offers to them or makes a promise to, right? So in that process, coming closer to home at VServe, we identified this trend that over a period of time, many digital companies would start doing that value exchange, which is done in a very sophisticated manner by people like Google and Meta. Okay, so any other platform outside of Google and Meta will get intelligent in terms of doing that job. Okay, and over time, most transacting platforms are doing it. News platforms, publishers platforms have to learn how to do that. Okay, so hence there is already an identifier which is a hash mobile number, which exists at scale. First of all, I want to land it back to the point that as an identifier today in India, hashed mobile numbers is a large piece of identifier which exists. Okay, and platforms today embrace the idea of leveraging that hashed identifier. Of course, that has to be consented. That's a larger discussion, and it will tie down into those dimensions of user consent, user privacy, and methodologies, but just dialing back at least to this point, so you can leverage that hash number at scale, either on Meta, either on Google, either on Snapchat, either on DV360, okay, either on Amazon DSP, right? So you're basically saying there is a world where the problem is resolved,
Right.
to a large extent, okay, and then there is a world where you have platforms which are outside the big tech ecosystems, the independent ad tech companies, whether it is a Taboola of the world, whether it is the Criteos of the world, okay, or whether it is a Trade Desk of the world, okay, when they solicit supply on this as a platform, they have to definitely solve the user ID problem, because they don't have any organic way of having that in their system.
I was tempted, to interrupt Deepak, but I didn't. And I agree with what Deepak is saying, okay? So my temptation to say is that now the marketer has tasted blood over the last 10 years because the ecosystem came and told us ROI, okay? The ecosystem came and told us that instead of, doing one mega communication for one consumer cohort and finding some common insight, you can actually target 12 different cohorts and you can do different messaging, right? So we've tasted blood. But if the same ecosystem, which is sitting here, which is, Deepak and you, Gaurav and Prasad, you come and tell us, don't worry, Dipali, Mr. CMO, don't worry. We will take care of the privacy issues. We will take care of this. We will take care of that. And your ROI won't get disturbed, right? In fact, we offer, even better precision targeting to you. I would just buy into that solution, right? Obviously, I'll spend time to understand how it happens, but some of the marketers may not even do that, So, I mean, that's what I was tempted to say that, look, at the end of the day, you're right, Deepak, that the marketers interested in better targeting, precision targeting, landing the message, and ensuring that my ROI, whichever way I calculate, and different marketers calculate ROI in very different fashions, okay, whichever way. So, I mean, Francis already told you about BFSI. Francis, I didn't mention that I spent 10 years doing BFSI also, whichever and different, I can assure you and tell you that different companies have absolutely different methodologies of doing, proving ROI. So I'm going to just stop here.
Dipali. So Dipali, you just mentioned, right, that advertisers have tasted blood in the last 10 years. So, my question to you is that now that advertisers have tasted blood and probably they would like to continue tasting this blood, what do you think, and what has actually happened is that because of this whole cookie deprecation thing being discussed so much across the globe, uh, it has made certain people who had not thought about their data strategies. It has made them sit up and take notice. So,
Yes.
Within your organization, is your data strategy something that you had been, charting the course for a long time, and it will continue to do so, or it has, made you stand up and take notice, and then, you are reforming the ways by which, you will be moving forward?
So I won't answer for us because I mean that's stuff that I can't talk about.
Sure,
But
sure.
let me give you a comment on in general what I'm hearing other CMOs say and what my observation is, especially from my IBM days where we were looking at how people utilize data. And that's an excellent question, by the way, Gaurav. There is a IBM CEO study that I'll find it and I'll share it with you. Where they've spoken about the fact that there are organizations who are high users of data, are sophisticated in the way they empower their employees and partners with data, and are actually looking to take decisions basis data and analytics. But not every organization does that. It's not sometimes even a function of categories. I mean, I liked Francis' point where he said that, look, even within B2C, some categories will get affected less than more, but it's the nature of the organizations. Okay. Of course, it's the nature of the category also that some organizations have very good first party data and financial services, of course, have it. But even after that, certain organizations are not data sophisticated, if we may call it, whereas some other organizations are, so that is actually impacting the way whether they are thinking about it, getting themselves ready for it, and finding ways and solutions just now, or not for it. So I'm very impressed, when Francis said that, look, we actually sat down and said, let's calculate the rupee impact. That makes me believe that HDFC Life perhaps is one of those organizations where they are data sophisticated. Right? Whereas there will be organizations who are not data sophisticated. They're not using data in the fashion that it can be used. And therefore, they may not be thinking about it because the impact on them is also going to be lesser, overall. So that is one area, that I want to just bring to your notice. The second area, look at the way marketing has evolved. Okay. Once again, very different in different organizations, but we are seeing these days that whether it could be two CMOs equivalent who are carrying the burden of acquisition marketing and carrying the burden of brand marketing, or it could be the same person like me wearing one hat, but I have right hand, left hand, which is one is carrying the brand marketing budget and the other is carrying, and I used to do that in Mahindra Holidays, okay, brand marketing budget and the acquisition marketing budget, right? And they're not fungible exactly, okay? I can only do, minor fungibility over there. I suspect that the people who are carrying the brand marketing budgets, because of the lack of sophistication of ROI calculation as it is over there, are going to get less impacted and are not going to be so worried. Okay. But the so-called performance marketing, acquisition marketing, or e-commerce, if the e-commerce business head is controlling the marketing budget and is making the decisions on where it is getting deployed, he or she is going to be more worried about the brand marketing leader, in that even within the sophisticated organization or less sophisticated organization. So I always say this, therefore, that bringing me back to the point that where and how are you calculating ROI? Right?
Great.
So that is the important bit, right? Now, there is a third category, which is, as I call, businesses born on the internet, which is, the D2C platform businesses, where the product itself is just so data-led. Reference to our conversation before we started recording, where Prasad was talking about the fact that, look, it's not just about the marketing, where the product experience itself is data-led and is basis interactivity and basis what we share, with that platform. Now, there is again going to be a mixed bag. What Deepak said over there, for example, which is that if I'm an app and, if people are anyway coming to my platform and, because of the interactivity that I've built in and there's nothing to do with third-party data, I will still get all the stuff that I'm getting over there. Right? As a customer and as a marketer, both. I mean, as a brand marketer or as a brand product person, I still have the opportunity of doing everything, that I'm doing over there. Comes back to the sophistication level of, my data usage and the data sets and the data analytics that I have built in. Having said that, there is a very large chunk of this whole advertising and marketing pie, which definitely goes into acquisition marketing, which definitely goes into data sophisticated models, where people look at ROI. That bit and that chunk, I have not quantified it, but that chunk will require redoing, how should I say, rework. And Deepak, I don't know why you're not still talking about the product that you actually have, with you, where you actually, saying that, look, a lot of first-party data teams can come together. But I think what the business model that he's worked out, I like it as a marketer. I think such models will emerge. And if some of either the ecosystem partners such as Deepak, or if some brand marketers such as Francis, they've taken the trouble of finding all this out in advance, and are the pioneers of, such work, then they will see greater returns and faster returns on, in the new era, is what I would say. And we must find them out and take lessons from what they're doing and follow it faster.
Absolutely. Thanks. So, Francis, Dipali made a very interesting observation that, there are probably two types of marketeers, and probably, you are, different other marketeers in the BFSI vertical, with the quantum of data that you have and what the user leaves behind because of their interaction. Is a lot. So in your view, for a more mature marketer, what would be the data strategy, and what should they be planning to do now and maybe 6 months down the line or a year down the line? We can't hear him. Francis, we cannot hear you. We cannot hear
Oh,
you.
sorry, I was on mute.
Yeah.
I think the recommendations are there, and they have been kind of been there for quite some time, right? And everybody has kind of spoken about, start putting your first-party data into order, be able to kind of resolve the myriad customers both at at a known prospect level where you have their email IDs and numbers, as well as at a known prospect level with the help of whatever universal data platform or CDP solution you have to kind of resolve and figure out who these people are across and how are you targeting them across your different platforms and across your different marketing campaigns. So that definitely continues to be important. It's important not only from a cookie deprecation point of view, it's also important from just optimizing your marketing spends point of view, right? So you're able to kind of reach out to the optimal number of exposures to the right set of people, and preferably people who are about to be in market or in market audiences and stuff like that, so that you see your revenue flow coming faster across. So I think that's one piece. The other element I think is working on very strong second party sort of data pieces, and a lot of this is both along the lines of what you would call as contextual marketing also, because let's look at insurance per se, right? I mean, if somebody is coming to look for insurance, and if he's not looking at insurance, at the manufacturers, then where is he looking for insurance at, right? So he's looking for insurance at various comparison sites. He's looking for insurance at various aggregators. He's looking for insurance across different places. A lot of these platforms are very contextual because people have come looking for the product that you're selling. And at the same time, a lot of these platforms also are happy to work with manufacturers, on a cost per lead basis. And this makes a lot of sense for all manufacturers across different services to be able to kind of work with them and ensure that there is better targeting, better way of reaching these customers, as well as a quick flow of from the time where the customer shows interest to the time it gets integrated into your CRM, it gets integrated into your buying journey and sales process, and be able to kind of give almost a seamless experience across, right? So a lot of that has accelerated. It's also accelerated because, at least in the life insurance space, a lot of players are looking at being, a lead gen kind of a provider much more, given the fact that there's a decent amount of fulfillment effort which is offline, right? Which is basically tele-assisted and a whole bunch of other things, right? Which if I am a pure play, say fintech, or a pure play IT or driven company, I may not want to pivot to kind of become like an aggregator where I have an army of telecallers and everything else. So a lot of these players are also very interested in monetizing this business and monetizing revenue, so they'll kind of move naturally in that direction, which works well for life insurance. But I'm sure for even other categories out there, there are different second party tie-ups that would make a lot of sense. And finally, the third piece I think is around being able to look at how are you using like Deepak already mentioned, there's hash phone numbers which is being used. There's basically traders coming up with UID and a whole bunch of other things. How are you going to use some of these elements going ahead? And will that help you in targeting better across different places? And how are you being adept at using them? I think that's the overall data strategy.
Great. Thanks, Francis. Prasad, you have a point.
An awesome discussion, but I have a very interesting thing, Deepak. Thank you for one thing, which is just we were talking about more from the targeting perspective and the usage of cookie. Okay, then I think mota thought process that I'm coming is that things are sorted, or big tech companies will provide some solution by which it can be happening. Okay, so I get that pretty well. Okay, but in the whole consumer journey, okay, when a prospective consumer is unknown and when he becomes known, and that is where distinction happens from third party to first party. Okay. Francis, you also mentioned very interesting thing wherein in a category wherein a lot of information has to be shared by the consumer. Okay, then it is easier to ask that. They will do, like some time back someone asked me what is your date of birth. I said why do you want it, right? But if insurance company wants date of birth, I will give it happily. If they don't ask, I have a problem, right? Okay. And the way probably B2B, Dipali, the way you said B2B, they are inherently connected and they pick up the information is from a ABM perspective and target. But my view here is that in B2C especially, there is major chunk of people, okay, who remain unknown. Out of 100 people who would come to a life insurance site, okay, there'll be only 4 people who will give a lead. I'm just thinking, mota number, okay, 10 max. There are 90 other one, okay, who probably would have had some touch point, traditional, physical or non-physical, and it goes beyond the targeting and then gets into the realms of, identifying someone's in some triangulation way. Okay, so that's something. Okay, another one is so if you go beyond target and start finding out, does my system identify or am I creating a value exchange for a consumer to give the data so that I can triangulate him? For one of the large consumer durable company, okay, when I studied their system, there are 32 different systems in which same consumer data was lying and it was not talking to each other. Just getting that together from the point they have sold it to AMC and reviving AMC. AMC was a different system for them. And that is where it goes beyond target. And then what we talk about creating those experience. Okay, so that's something probably if you target, I understand targeting. Okay, but making unknown to known and creating experience and stitching all the data across all the systems and many a times triangulating the data. Okay. Now, my question here is also probably later on, Deepak, I'll just probably later on someone we can take it. And that is where now when the government looks or the lawmakers look into data, okay, they go beyond targeting. Targeting तुम्हारा problem है, you'll figure it out. Okay. But we always, as marketeers, have abused the data, okay, of consumer. Sorry to say that, okay, because वो क्या वो खूल चखाता वाला someone talk about it, right? Okay, yeah, okay, because I can abuse it to target you. You like it, you don't like it. I have money, I can reach to you. Okay, you can't hide with me. I'll find you and I'll show you my ad types. Okay, that movie dialogue, hai na, I'll know. I don't know who you are, I don't know where you are, but I'll find you types. Okay. So isme, that is where I think who's the fiduciary, who's the processor, okay? I think it goes beyond from the targeting to multiple other things, and many a times from the DPDP perspective, you like it or you don't like it. If the data it gets used not right way and someone complains, the legal team and CEO is going to come hunting for you. Maybe it can be discussed later on. Okay, but if you can take discussion a bit away from targeting is sorted. Okay, yeah. So my view, probably, I think Gaurav, you are the.
Let me just come in here. I think yes, you're absolutely right that targeting is like the alternate keyword to cookie right now. Okay, but coming back to a very basic thing, when an organization thinks that they need to have a play on data, my provoking question is, whose KPI is that? Is that the KPI of the marketing organization? Is that the KPI of the CEO? Very simple. Okay, the moment I say data strategy is the KPI of the CEO, okay, because data as an ingredient has application for various units, not just for Dipali's organization. When Dipali looks at data from a marketing organization perspective, she will have a narrow lane of that opportunity. Okay, but the moment let me quote a fun fact. There are a lot of articles which say that, listen, cookies are coming, please start collecting first party data. Okay, I really find that extremely funny, honestly. Okay, because you are supposed to offer consumer experience and in the process you'll get data. Okay, you're not a company to collect data. You're supposed to just offer great experience to consumers. That's one. The other fun side of it, Prasad, is that imagine there are companies who suddenly say, "Mere paas data nahi hai and I need data." In the same breath, there are many organizations who've got first-party data, enormous amount of first-party data. Okay, which is not in harmony, which is lying in silo, which is getting wasted. Okay, look at that entity when the world is telling them, okay, go collect the data. And here is an entity which over 10, 20 years sitting with tons of data. And the marketing organization now is going and telling the CIO and the CEO, sir, can you now make a move? Because I need to access it for my marketing organization. Okay. So there, a smart marketing guy would just scare the shit out of the CEO and say that if you don't do it, my marketing is going to get impacted. Okay. So yes, I really find that element around the ownership of that vertical, Prasad. Coming back to the part that the moment you put the ownership in the hands of the right person, and first who, then what? Simple. First why, then how. So if you have the who and the why, yeah, life can get a little simpler, hopefully.
Francis,
Yeah, two things. Yeah, I mean, basically, first let me speak about a little bit about what Deepak said, right? I mean, whose KPI is it, right? And interestingly, whenever there is any conversation around creating the equivalent of a data lake, a CDP, a UDP, or whatever else, right? The first question that gets asked is, okay, this looks like a very upstream investment, right? Who's signing the CBA? Where is the benefits going to come from, right? And the problem with this is that, while it's a relevant and the right question to ask, the problem with this is that the person who's kind of going to go and say that, okay, I am signing the CBA and this is my benefit, right, will not necessarily have a very, very, entire picture around the whole thing. Even if the person is the CMO of the organization, etc., there are a lot of benefits of a unified data platform, which is across the organization and not only the marketing team. And when you kind of go with, say, a sort of 2, 3, 4, 5 use cases that you feel that, okay, this is where the upstream investment can finally straight line to revenue. The next question would be, okay, these are good, but the investment seems to be high because and the larger the company, the more this will happen. And if it's a capital allocation problem, I mean, I have 5 other projects from a capital budgeting perspective, which will give me, say, higher IRR or higher NPV, right, or higher allocation. Then why should I allocate this? And I can't tell you how many companies have stopped, or rather have not moved fast enough, primarily because of this hurdle or this block, right? Saying that, okay, we need to kind of figure out first the optimal IRR from a particular piece, or get all the possible benefits that can come, right? And therefore, at some point of time, it becomes either crystal ball glazing, saying that, okay, when this happens and we'll have this, great data points and everything else, we'll connect everything and everything will move really well. And in some case, you're overestimating that when you're looking at the future. Or in some case, you're underestimating it because you say, okay, I can sign up only for, XYZ only right now because that's what I see. And therefore, in some things, it's everybody's KPI. The ability to do 10 other things once your data platform is in place, and 10 things which are more realistic, not just a pipe dream, can happen when you have connected all the dots. And when you see, for example, what is your, say, for example, what is your platform targeting, where you're reaching the same, customer through 2 different walled gardens, right? And say that, okay, can I save this? So can I do something like that? This is at the marketing end, there enough number of things that, other operational touch points and so on and so forth. So I think the question is to get started somewhere, and to, while it's important to make a business case and have, the right investments, etc., to also have this kind of thing that it's an important and the right thing to do. Let's build it along the way. So I think that was primarily in response to, what Deepak said. I think, from what Dipali said, I think one very interesting thing, I think, it's usually easier for the sort of performance marketer at the bottom of the funnel to kind of come back with, your whichever metric you want, cost per lead, cost per conversion, return on ad spend, and some of the other things, and they know the various avenues, and measurement becomes easier, right? The bigger impact of the deprecation of some of this is actually at the brand side, right? While a lot of brand marketers in the past were happy with only their what is their unique reach, what is their CPM, and how many new people have they reached, etc. Today, brand marketers are tasked with a little more than that. They're tasked with reaching out to the relevant audience. They're tasked to reaching out with people who are the correct cohort or the correct psychographic profile for your product, and so on and so forth. And for them, being able to draw that straight line, because for them it's even a little more further away, to draw that straight line, how am I doing that and how I'm doing the optimum exposures there is actually a little more difficult than the life of a performance marketer, if you ask me.
I'll open it up for everyone actually. So we had these cookies, right, like forever, and the user didn't know that these cookies were being dropped on their browser, and once they got to know, they complained about it, and then GDPR came in, where GDPR said, "Hey, why don't you seek permission?" So then you started seeing those boxes where they were, seeking consent, and then someone said, "Hey, third-party cookies shouldn't be there altogether." And Firefox and Safari, they blocked third-party cookies, and then the pressure was on Google, and they said, "Okay, let's get done with it altogether." But then we have, Mr. Publisher, where they have a team out there curating content. They have salaries to pay. We inherently assume that content comes for free, but obviously there is a cost to it. And their efficiencies, especially the ones that have a higher traffic on their website, their efficiencies have kind of lowered now by 20-30%. So what is happening is that more and more publishers are now asking users to log in with their mobile number and email IDs. So my question to all of you is, as thought leaders, what do you think this has brought us to? Like where we had a cookie which was like an alphanumeric string of characters where you couldn't have picked up the phone and called someone. Now we have content publishers asking users to give their phone number and email ID, and without that they wouldn't let them consume content. Where do you think this will lead us to?
Okay, so let me jump in here.
I have more questions, but I want to add to the questions, okay, Deepak, before you answer.
Yeah.
And some of these are technical stuff that I don't have answers to, right? I think what you do on YouTube as an advertiser is not impacted by cookies. I at least think so. Okay. I think what you do on Facebook as advertisers is not impacted by cookies either, right? And these are various digital mechanisms which will continue to therefore, stay and work. We have to, my question is that, what are the areas that are going to really get impacted is something as a marketer, I have to still understand exactly and say, okay, what chain works and what doesn't. Second is that as a marketer, I'm now asking the ecosystem, the same ecosystem, which is, to me, it's an ecosystem, right? There is a publisher, there is a, there is a Google Meta equivalent. There is, Prasad, who is a digital marketing services, data, whatever, provider. There is Deepak, who's operated in this space. I will just, as a marketer, say, hey guys, do you have a solution? Come back and talk to me.
Yeah, thanks, Dipali.
Dipali, just right after this, I'm going to give you a call. Yeah. Okay. You promised Prasad and me an opportunity. Prasad, meeting fix kar lo Dipali ke saath. Okay, but okay. So Gaurav, what I could make out of the question was that there is a category of enterprises which are content publishers. Like a Times of India, NDTV. There are content publishers who are in the business of producing content and monetizing that via ads. Okay. Now, those setups were leaning on the advantage of cookies because an ad tech company, whether it was an Outbrain, whether it was a Taboola, were dropping cookies, third-party cookies, on their publishing platforms on one side. And on the other side, those organizations were going to people like Dipali and Francis and were giving a promise that we'll give you better targeting and you can measure. Right? That was the value chain which was at play. Okay. Now, with the cookie piece deprecating, what typically happens for those publishers they have to now take it upon themselves. There was a role which the AdTech company in between was playing from a perspective to better targeting, okay? Because that was the value they were able to offer to Francis or to Dipali, correct? Now from a publisher perspective, now we're basically saying that how will the AdTech company solve the identifier problem? It's a huge problem. It's not a small problem. Okay, for an AdTech company to resolve all these, I'm not like a firm believer of these UID solutions at this point of time. I feel they are, a long way, from accuracy and so on and so forth, right? But in the meantime, a content publisher is now, it's like a cat amongst the pigeon, okay? They have to take it upon themselves, okay, and say that, look, they need to find an elegant way to get that user to leave that identifier so that they can, on the back of that identifier, work with alternate platforms like people like us sit with tons of alternate data behind a hash number and in a secured manner, so that they can make their targeting better. Okay, so I think they have to crack it. There is no choice there. And they have to learn from the likes of Google and Meta. See, if you even notice, if we as consumers notice, whilst we are speaking about cookie deprecating, you would have seen Google very smartly in the last 2 years. When you're in the browser, when you're using your email, okay, they've very elegantly asked you that, can you put up a backup number? Can you put up someone else's number in your family so that we can send you a secured OTP? They will log you out, okay, and they will again take you through a process. Yeah. So there, like, do you remember, like 3 years ago on the browser, you never had the need to sign in.
Absolutely.
Correct? Okay, so they had the foresight. They knew that, okay, this is something, an alternative I have to create, but I also need to build an alternative, because on one side, I'm a beneficiary of cookies. I'm now advocating deprecation of that, but I want business continuity, so I will find a way out. So even if Google has to find an elegant way out, why not a local publisher in India or anywhere else?
Absolutely. Thanks, Deepak. So we've exceeded our time, but it was a very insightful session. And being the first, I think we have set very high benchmarks. So thank you for your time, everyone. Thank you, Dipali. Thank you, Francis. Thank you, Deepak. And thank you, Prasad, for being here and stirring up a lot of hands. So thank you, everyone.